He was a very good carpenter at first, but that's what he did for the place. And he was a very good carpenter. And I worked out a lot after I got older to different places. We worked for $1.50 a week. And so I worked for a lady there, and Tom Rice, and my husband was building a barn for Brother Keaton. And that's where we first got the plane. And then he was playing too one night. That's the first time I saw him. The first time I saw him, he was playing over there for a dance in the little house we had there, playing the violin.
He played the violin.
Oh, he played everything. He didn't play.
Oh, I see. He was the musical one day.
Yes, yes.
That's the first time you saw him, when he was playing for a dance.
Yes, it was.
So were you interested in him then? Were you interested when you first saw him that time?
Oh, I didn't know that I was.
That wasn't the beginning, then?
No, that's it wasn't there.
Okay. But he courted you for 2 years?
Yes, sir. We rode on horses usually, and we went to the horses. And one night we went to, there was another girlfriend, myself, and another boy, and my husband. They picked us up the Bicknell to a dance, and that was a kind of a funny affair. We went in the white top buggy, and they had got their horses together, their saddle ponies together to put on the buggy, and they went up there all right, and we got coming back, and they balked. And that's worse than a flat tire. You couldn't.
That was like running out of gas. Huh?
It was worse than that. Yes. They couldn't get anything started. No way they tried. But we finally got home. They'd done every kind of a thing they could imagine to get to us. But we had a lot of nice times.
But he finally did ask you to marry him, did he?
Oh, yes, he asked me long before I'd done it.
Oh, did he? It took you a while to make up your mind to it then,
yes, sir.
Okay. Well, now, where were you married then?
We were married in the Salt Lake Temple.
You took a trip up to Salt Lake?
We went to the horse and buggy over to Venice, and then left the outfit there, and we went up on the train. We was married, and we went to conference. They had general conference at the same time. We went to general conference. President Anthony H. Lund married us, and we felt quite happy about that.
Very nice.
And of course, it was the first time either one of us had ever been to temple, so it was quite an experience. We both thought we'd done something we hadn't any right to do.
Oh, I think you did the right thing.
Yes, I think we did too, but we didn't think we were doing it right.
Oh, I see.
We thought we were just going in there and they'd perform the ceremony and we'd walk out.
Oh, I see. Well, it was a nice experience, though, wasn't it?
Yes, it was a very lovely experience. Very lovely.
It's
a nice way for anybody to get married, I'll tell you.
Yeah. All right. Now, where did you go to make your home after you got married?
We came back to Teasdale. My husband kind of wanted to go up into Idaho, but our parents were getting old, and I said, oh, let's stay around a year or so. And by the time we stayed a year or so, we just got our roots down till we just stayed there.
Didn't ever leave.
Just in that one little town. All our life through.
What did he do to make a living?
Well, he was a splendid good carpenter, and he done carpenter work all over the county. He built barns and houses, I guess, I don't know, about a third of the houses in Wayne County there that they first built. Of course, some of them they tore down. But he was a splendid good carpenter, and he did carpenter work, and then he finally bought him a sawmill. And so we moved up to the mountains in the summertime. I'd go up with him. Of course, he'd work up there all winter as long as he could, but I had to come home and take the children to school.
Sure.
But he really worked up there. I had to cook for all the men. That time they had no trucks, no cars. They went by wagons, and the roads were poor, and they'd break down the wagons. And I just like cooking for Thrasher. 3 meals a day. I baked up 50 pounds of flour every week of the world up there.
Mm-hmm. About how many men usually were you cooking for?
Oh, we had 4 or 5. Let's see. We had 4 besides my husband was always there, and then the fellows that logged a lot of times they'd come there.
Oh yeah. Okay. All right. Well then, it was at Teasdale that your family started coming along, isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
Would you like to tell us about them? Tell about the oldest one first, and tell us about that child's life, and then each one in turn.
Well, our first boy's name was Ernest Hanson. He was born on Valentine's Day in 1910.
Mm-hmm.
He was married in 1911. He was married in 1910. He was born in 1911.
Okay.
And he was a beautiful child. He had curly hair. His hair was just curly as it could be, and he was a beautiful child. Of course, we naturally thought he was all right. We just naturally thought he was a good boy, and he was a good boy all his life. He was a hard-working boy, and of course, as soon as they got old enough, we sent him off to college. He went up to the University of Utah for 3 years, and 1 year to the Y. And then he started in teaching school. He taught elementary school for a while.
Oh, yes.
And then when he got a high school in Bicknell, he's been teaching in the high school ever since.
He's still in there?
Still there, yes.
Oh, he married?
Yes, sir. He married a Peterson girl from Boulder, and she's a lovely girl, just a lovely girl. And they had 3 lovely children. And he went on a mission. We sent him on a mission to the northern states. And since he's married, why, he's been the High Council for a long while. I can't remember how many years. And then he was bishop. And now he's the stake clerk.
Well, he's been a busy life.
And yes, he surely is busy too. I think sometimes too busy. But he's sure been a good boy. He's never had any bad habits whatever. He never used any bad language, never tried any of the smoking or anything like that. And he's a thoroughly religious boy. He pays his tithe and his fast offerings, has done all along.
All right. Now, what was the next one's name?
The next girl was a girl, Fern. And that's the one, the little girl that was sick with
the one that you told about?
Yes, sir. And she
was
a lovely good girl. She worked in nearly all organizations in the church, and then she was Relief Society president there in town, and she secretary to organizations, and she played the piano some, and then after she's married, why she moved to Orem, and she was mutual president up there, and then she and her husband went on a state mission for 2 years, just a state mission, not a mission, but a state mission.
Now, what was her husband's name?
Vedette Coleman.
Coleman.
All
right.
They converted 13, they brought 13 people into the church on that state mission. I thought that was very good.
Very good record. Bet.
But they were just like regular missionaries, and they studied hard, and they worked hard.
Mm-hmm.
Now she's working in the press up at BYU.
Oh, yes. Very fine. They had a family.
Oh, they have a lovely family. Very brilliant family. They had 2 boys and 4 girls. Both the boys filled missions, and the little girls, they were secretaries down to the Geneva Steel and put themselves through school. And they have lovely families, and they're very brilliant children, all of them. One boy, he's a flyer.
Oh, yeah.
The other boy, he works for the Western Electric, and he does very well. He went off to Texas.
Mission to Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And the other boy went off mission, both those boys.
Oh, yeah. Very fine. All right. Now, what's the name of the next one?
The next one was Reba. And she was, we thought, such a darling little girl. She went to school. We sent all the children off to college. I'll never forget when she left, she just felt like she couldn't leave home. She'd sit and play the piano and cry for about 3 days. But she finally got weaned away, but she would come home no matter what, every chance she'd get, you know. She taught school. She taught school in Perry and in Yeltsin and Brigham and Korean. She was a very good school teacher, and she's teaching now in Korean again. Now children's trade.
Well, now, who did she marry?
She married Jewel Nelson from Korean.
All right. Did she have, how many children did she have?
And she had 6, but their little boy, they lost him at childbirth, but and they had 5 little girls. They had 5 beautiful little girls. And 2 of them is in college, and one in high school, and the other 2 in the elementary school. But
where are they living now?
They live in Korean.
They're still in Korean?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
They live in Korean.
All right. Okay, now the next one.
And the next one is Ala. She is our baby girl. And we sent her down to here to Cedar for 2 years to school, and then to college, and then she went up to the BYU a couple of years. And she is also a school teacher. They've all been teaching school.
Very good.
She's a brilliant little girl. She's could be a writer if she would, but she don't seem to do it.
Doesn't pursue that.
But she's quite a smart little girl. They had to fight hard wrote a whole after they'd married, and she married Blaine Abraham from Kanosh, and they moved up to Salt Lake, and they bought them a ground, just a little 2-room house on it. And she wasn't very satisfied with that. She was like her father. She's a carpenter.
Oh, yeah.
And her husband was busy, and so she just got busy, and he got them tail there, and she fixed them up a pretty respectable house there to live in.
This is a switch, isn't it?
Made cabinets in it, and she done a very good job.
Fine. That's wonderful. Okay, they have family, you say?
Yes, they had 6. All 3 of the girls had 6 children.
Each. Oh.
Yes, 6 each. She has 3 boys, and there's 4 boys and 2 girls.
Oh, yeah.
No, she has 3 boys and 3 girls. Now I got it right here. Yes, sir.
All right. Now, let's see. Is that 4 or 5?
That's 4.
That's 4, isn't it?
Then we have our youngest one was a boy, Weston Bryce, and he was just a jack of all trades. He really was. He was a very handy fellow. He could just do anything.
Mechanical.
He was very brilliant at that. He went to Korea in the service. He was right on the firing lines, or just behind the firing lines. He had to keep up the communication. And then he went on a mission to Brazil. He's gone there for 30 months. Then he married. Then he went to college at the university, and he met a girl out from Pennsylvania.
Which school did he go to?
He went to the University of Utah.
Of Utah. And this is where he met the girl?
Yes, that's where he met the girl.
And what's her name?
Evelyn Wallen was her name.
All right.
And she's a lovely little girl, but she never joined the church. And that's always made us feel bad. She's just a sweeter little girl as you ever saw, but she's never joined the church.
Give it time, maybe she'll do that.
Oh, I hope she will. Weston was so positive that that's what would happen when he married her. You don't know. She might not. Her father was a strong Baptist. He's been on the missions for the Baptist church, and he has quite an influence. He had two girls.
This would have its effect on her.
Yes, that has. But she's very sweet. They have one little boy that's all they've had. He's a lovely little fellow, but as soon as he got to be 8 days old, it seems that the Weston took him to church and had him baptized.
8
days old.
8 days old?
8 days old, to get his name, you know.
Oh, this is the christening in the church?
Yes. No, in our church. He had it done in our church.
I see what you mean.
So she was just as sweet as she can be, and she sees that Weston, she never keeps him from tending to his church duties. She's a real sweet that way.
Well, I think that'll probably all work out fine.
Well, we hope so. We're hoping and praying that's what'll happen.
All right, now let's see. Let's go back now and talk about your own life after you were married. You told us about the children. We need to know a little bit about what you did during these years. Were you active in church work after you were married?
Yes, sir. I was. I was president of primary for a couple of years, and then my children came along pretty close together, so I stayed home with my children for a while. Then I finally went and taught the Beehive class in Mutual, and like I tell you, after I promised what I would do, why, they come and asked me to be president of the Mutual. I was president of Mutual for 2 years, and I was president of the Relief Society for 8 years and 2 months as a Ward Relief Society. And then I just been released from that a month, and they asked me to be state president of the Relief Society, and I was state president of the Relief Society for a little better than 6 years.
Oh, Lord. Well, you had a long service in the Relief Society.
And I taught in Sunday school a little bit, not much. I done less in Sunday school than anything.
I see. Okay. Well, now then, this means then that you've been real active all your life in church.
Well, I have. We was in the my husband and I was in genealogy committee too.
What was your husband doing during these years after you were married? Did he go to church too?
You bet.
Okay. What did he do in church?
Well, I just can't tell you. I could easily tell you what he didn't do, but then
he did so many things.
He did so many things. Yes, he was. He was president of the Mutual for a long while, and he was the superintendent of the religion classes for years. And then he was in the High Council for, I don't know, I guess it must have been 30 years. He was in the High Council. And then he was patriarch for 32 years.
My goodness, 32 years.
Yes.
That's a wonderful record, isn't it?
Just a while before he passed away, we was looking over the records, and he'd get better than 1,000 blessings in the state.
That's wonderful.
And of course, I helped us. I was scribe, believe it or not. I couldn't do it now, but I was then anyway.
Oh. Well, this was a marvelous experience for both of you then, wasn't
Yes, and then another thing. He made caskets. He made caskets for, they didn't, you know, and they didn't, he made all the caskets, and I helped him trim them. And we together we made caskets for a lot of people in Wayne County, I'll tell you.
Well, of course, in the Relief Society presidency, you had a lot to do with this.
Oh, yes, I surely did. We had everything to do. They never had the mortuaries then, and so we had to lay out the dead. And I tell you, sometimes my children didn't know whether they had mothers or not. I don't know how to.
Well, I can see that would be true. Do you think that it injured your children any to do all this church work?
Well, they was bigger then, you see. So I didn't leave them when they were little. I never had no babysitters. I just couldn't do that.
In other words, there is a way to handle it if it's done right.
Well,
right?
We handled it. The one that it affected more than any of them was our youngest son. He was just a little fellow, and they wanted me to be ward president of the Relief Society. And then my husband went to so many things that he wasn't home, and then I'd have to go. I tell you, I left home with tears in my eyes a good many times. Little fellow sat in front of the radio alone because the other children mostly had gone then, you see.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, now,
I don't know whether it affected him or not. Then my husband, another thing too, he played every kind of an instrument you could imagine. He played the violin, he played the piano, and he played the mandolin and the guitar. And the banjo too. He played anything. And of course we tried to, he seen to it that the children had instruments. As a fellow came in there and he bought instruments for all the children. He bought a little violin for the little girl, for our youngest girl. And our oldest son had a bass violin, and our oldest son had trombone.
Well, this had a wonderful effect on your family then, growing up, didn't it?
Well, I think it did. And then it was quite nice because we had the piano there in the home at that time, and he's given a lot of the children in the county lessons too, you know, and they'd come to our home and he'd get lessons there. He stayed there quite a bit to our home.
All right. Well, now let's see. After all this marvelous lifetime of experience, I think you're well qualified to give counsel to your descendants. I'd like you to tell them some of the things that you've learned about life that you feel they ought to know. Give them counsel. And maybe you'd like to bear your testimony.
That's the hardest thing that I can think of, but I know that money isn't the only thing there is in the world that makes people happy. I learned that. When I was in the Relief Society, I loved people. I learned to love people, and I still love them here in the temple. So many of them, and I think that there's other things more important than money. Of course, we have to have so much of it, but I think if they live a good, clean life, live the word of wisdom as it's outlined that we should do, then live by the 13th article of faith. I've always thought that would be a good guide in anybody's life, to live the 13th article of faith.
Very good. Let's see now. How long has it been since your husband died?
He passed away 3 years ago on the 26th of June.
I see. And now you've come down to the St. George Temple to work in the temple, is that it?
I've worked here ever since he left in the winter times.
Fine.
I don't know what I'd done if it hadn't been for that, because our home was kind of on